all of us. They form part of the cabinet. They are supposed to advise. And they are as good in terms of the advice that they will give to me as the information that you provide to them and the analysis that you proffer. And I see a lot of punditry out there, people claiming this is analysis, we're analyzing. Even columnists in newspapers, aside from the palpably false narratives that they peddle, and the misrepresentations, there's no analysis going on out there. It's troubling. People just fulminate, state and anchored speculations and pass them off as analysis. It's actually an embarrassment. And some of them can even tell you authoritatively how you must do things because they purport to be analyzing. The people who should inform analysis are yourselves in the front lines of praxis, of action, of implementation, dealing with real challenges, flesh and blood individuals needing, demanding, entitled to land and other resources. So if anybody is to make any analysis on anything land related, that person must be anchored on information, accurate data from yourselves, in the absence of which there cannot be any analysis. In fact, anything that comes out may actually be misleading, and we may take inappropriate, dangerous decisions because we are relying on inaccurate data. So it's important for yourselves, land boards, to have the data, to be able to process it yourselves and to transmit it to those who are then charged with the responsibility of utilizing this data to make decisions. So it's important for us to appreciate at the outset that you deal with a resource, land, that is inelastic. We can't stretch it. We only have what we have, 582,000 square kilometers or so, a substantial part of which they may declare unusable because it is desert. But we will have to find some use for that in the modern day with the existing technologies. The challenge, therefore, is this inelastic resource is vital to production. It is a factor of production. This economy cannot move, cannot function if the land boards are not functioning optimally. We need to understand this. And once we understand this, then we need to step back and ask ourselves very basic questions. What are the animating considerations, the rules that regulate our securing allocation of this inelastic resource, land? What are the problems with this? And I step back because we cannot operate ahistorically. We cannot be ahistoric. We cannot divorce ourselves from the history. So we've got to place ourselves somewhere within this historical thread that brings us where we are today. What is this history? it is this in a nutshell. At independence, we inherited 3 tenurial systems. One, crown land, which was land held by the settler, the white settler communities. And maybe before we even get there, this history evidences dispossession and displacement, part of the history. People were moved, displaced, their lands were taken for whatever reason. And certain individuals acquired large swathes of land. No fee, no consideration whatsoever, except perhaps the service that they gave to the colonial power in addition to the color of their skins. Fact. I'm not inventing this. I'm just staring it in the face. It is part of the history. And so, when we gained our independence, through that order in Council 1179 of 1965, that gave us not just the independence, but it came with an annexure. And that annexure to the order in Council 1179 was this current constitution. It was given to us after 2 conferences, 1961, 1963. Some argue those conferences were not representative of the total ethnic and other dynamics of the country. But that's a debate for another day. The fact is, we got this. And when we took this, one of the trade-offs was to secure this title for these communities, which was separate and distinct from other types of land holding or ownership. Tribal, from the tribal reserves, crown land, and then we had state land. Upon attainment of independence, we then rechristened. We called this, well, this remained tribal land, state land, and now we have freehold. Freehold. This is a different level of land ownership. This is complete, impregnable. Freehold means you hold the title to the land in perpetuity. Nobody can interfere with your land rights. Certain parts of our country are freehold, others are not. That's discrimination by any guise, but we inherited it and we kept it. Maybe we even embraced it willingly. And we legalized it. We normalized this historical injustice. We embraced, we normalized, we legislated. Then we put under Section 8 of our Constitution that you cannot be dispossessed of the land. We secure title to the land in the Constitution, itself an inherited document in critical respects. And if this land is to be taken away from you, you must receive, the Constitution says, prompt and adequate compensation. Must be prompt, it must be adequate. What is adequate? Prompt we may, by common sense, understand. What is adequate compensation? There's a school of thought in public international law called the Calvo doctrine, under some, there's the name of some South American jurist who said the standard, the scale of compensation is not market. It's nothing to do with the market. You've held this land, you've used it, you've benefited from it. We'll give you what we think. That's the quantum that we determine the quantum, we from whom you took the land at some point. But our courts here, in the Bonington Farms case, which you may know, have said adequate compensation is not just market, it is above and beyond market. Market is low. Prompt, yes. Adequate means even any consequential loss, nothing to do with the market value as such, forms part of the consideration in affording compensation. These are the realities in which you have to do your work. We've given them to you as I described them. And your task then, within these strictures and limitations, is to find your way. So, here you are. You have to deal with the land. What type of land do you deal with mainly? Tribal, isn't it? What is the underlying problem with tribal land? It is a question of the value of the land. Relative to freehold, tribal land is of very low value. It is undervalued. And this has very serious economic implications. And that is why even the government, in my humble view, has tended to approach issues of land in the manner that it has so far, because it has never realized that it is dealing with a resource of immense value, simply because this value has not been appreciated, recognized. And it has resulted in wholesale impoverishment of our people. So a person who holds a 40 by 40 is actually a very rich person. There's no doubt about it. A person who holds a larger piece in the scale of wealth is very wealthy. But there are people who have land, but they are paupers in this country because that value of the land is not recognized. We have a collective challenge as a country to try and restore value to the land. Then maybe we might appreciate the role that those who deal in land are performing in our country and in our economy. Very critical. So, how do we angle artfully, carefully, our way to restoring the value of the land, tribal land, whatever they want to call it? What are the terms of holding the land? I once argued in Parliament when I was a member of Parliament before I got frustrated and vowed that I would never be a member of Parliament. So when I left, I took a conscious decision. I will never come and waste my time here in Parliament, because one of the arguments I advanced then was to try and restore the value of tribal land. why don't we give a parcel of land to either a household or a family, whatever the agreed parcel size is, and say this is freehold, this one is freehold, title is held in perpetuity, you can't sell it, you can only bequeath it on your kith and kin along the line until the last one, even when we are not here. So that land becomes, in at least in this limited sense, and not just an inelastic, but also an inalienable resource. You can't alienate it because we've given it to you. It has to run in the family. It is a part of the wealth that this country has bequeathed on this family, that this family will never be poor, because this family will never alienate this inheritance. As the family grows, at least in the family, there's a certain parcel of land that is the reference for them, for their identity as a family, part of their DNA, and what this country has given to them. It's a debate. I stirred it then. I had no takers. The minister was Mr. Maele. He wasn't keen on it. But it wasn't his fault. He was part of a system. Sometimes we personalize and blame an individual for the sins of a collective. And some of the sins are ideological. You have to think differently to reason this way. Ideologically, you've got to reject certain propositions. Be a rebel, fight, and say, I don't think I want to accept this dominant paradigm. So people say mindset shift, mindset change. What are you talking about? When you've embraced these colonial bequests, you haven't challenged them, you haven't sought to supplant and replace them with anything new, and you are saying mindset change. There is absolutely no mindset change. Mindset change means you go down to the root, structural fundamentals of this economy, and redefine them, reimagine them. That's what I'm here to do with you. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I'm not here to glorify what I find. I'm not going to leave this country in the same shape that I found it. No. I'll either mess it up badly or change it spectacularly. And I'm going in that direction. So this is what we must all strive to do. Thinking outside the box. No, there's no box. We've rejected the notion of a box. We are floating, spinning in infinity, as Paul Simon says, so that we try and find a different center of consciousness for this country, for the people of this country. So there will be many competing suggestions and propositions. Many of them must come from you, because you've dealt with these things on a daily basis. I'm theorizing. I'm speaking from the vantage point of a legal academic and maybe practitioner. But you have been in the front lines. You know, you've seen flesh and blood people in need of land, couldn't get it, or who had it, but it was of no use, no value to them. So when we secure title, when we secure the title, we must not be securing title to some resource that is undervalued. It must be title to something that counts, has value. Then we will appreciate that when we say this is a land board, we are talking about an entity that is dealing in hundreds of millions. It has to apportion, has to distribute these millions judiciously and equitably amongst people of diverse, divergent, varied, variegated interests. But at the end of it all, so that this economy works for these people. That's what it's about. Now, if we are together on this main proposition, and we understand that to engage in a proper analysis, you hold the aces because you have the facts. As a lawyer, I cannot function if I have not ascertained the fact pattern. What are the facts? And those facts for me must be backed by evidence. Without evidence, I can't comment. I can merely speculate. I can raise suspicions. But suspicions, however strong, are not fact. So in order to make valid decisions about land, about how to manage it, I need to have the benefit of insight from those who have been in the front lines of land matters. They can tell me, they can educate me, they can instruct me, they can school me, so that I understand better what we are dealing with. Very important for all of us. What have I said so far? I have said to you, you people may not realize how important a role you play, a role that sounds in hundreds of millions, not just of pula, but of dollars and euros, because you are dealing with a resource that we cannot stretch. It's inelastic, but it is pivotal to the economic success of this country. So, I don't envy your position. I don't even envy mine, by the way. When you are in the front lines and people are screaming at you, they want land, and you are constrained because of these limitations that I've described, some of them. It's an invidious position to be in. It's not pleasant. How do we work around these things? We need to resolve these. And when we resolve them, once we understand the challenges, we have the facts, we have the evidence, we go back and we change the laws. We have to change these laws, it seems to me. That's what Parliament has to do, is it not? That's the main function of Parliament, by the way. If you read the Constitution, I don't see any other role that Parliament plays there. Section 86 is very clear. The Parliament is established, yes, for what? To make laws for the peace, order, and good government of this country. That's the role of Parliament. Anything else is what they ascribe to themselves, but what the Constitution gives them is this role. That is why I have asked, stop asking questions, stop moving motions, because these motions are a waste of time. They are ineffectual, by the way. Why are they ineffectual? Because the Constitution has given you a function. When you exercise this function, you don't negotiate with the president. You don't request him. You don't request the executive. You bind the executive. It is mandatory for the executive to enforce laws that Parliament has passed. Why are you wasting your time begging when you can command in accordance with the Constitution? And when you send these motions to the executive and the executive says, no, we've considered, then nothing. How have you helped? You want to go back to your constituents and say, I spoke in Parliament, but what did you achieve? Except to waste time and get a sitting allowance. Let's get down to work. Let's make the laws. Meaning, let's unmake others that are there. Let's amend them. Let's dismantle. Let's engage in a real mindset paradigm shift. This is what we are called upon to do. And that mindset shift, by the way, that paradigm shift must be powered by yourselves. You must tell these folks. This is what you guys must do, because we are facing these problems. You have created and saddled us with problems. These are the problems, and this is how we think you can resolve them. And you must tell them. Once they get to understand, they'll realize how important you are, and when they come to you, they'll come to you with some measure of respect. They'll realize what we need for this country to develop, which is the land as a factor of production, is under management. Who are the managers? These land boards. What are they complaining about? Then you can start telling them about your welfare issues. When you mention these welfare issues, you think they understand. Why do they not understand? Because they don't realize you are administering, you are presiding over a resource that sounds in billions, by the way. They don't realize this. So when you tell them 1/3 of the country, to them it's just a fraction, it's a figure. They don't understand. So you need to make them understand. I'm not saying they are stupid. They are very smart. Very smart. But sometimes the energy, the zeal is misdirected. You see, politicians tend to want to score points. And sometimes the points are cheap. You know? So we need to move away from soundbite politics, cheap sloganeering, point scoring, labeling each other, political colors and affiliations and filiations. These things don't matter. If they did, you would not be sitting here with Dr. Dikolote. He would not be here, because someone would have said, which party does he belong to? But a maverick sat in that position and said, I don't care. I don't care what party he comes from. In fact, I don't care which parties you come from, yourselves here. I don't care. Doesn't matter to me. That's not what decides the fate of a country. All the people of the country must come together. There's a certain point of need, a point of convergence that has no regard for parties, colors. No. It has regard for the supreme welfare of the people of the country. That's what matters. Yes. So I'm here so that first you read me, you understand me. Don't hear from the grapevine. This guy is very arrogant. Yes, he's arrogant to the extent that he sat down somewhere in the bundus, in the depths of hell, and said to himself, I can be president and I will be, and nobody is going to stop me. I don't care what they do to me, I will get there. And he got there. That's the arrogance. Aside from that, very humble guy, very shy guy, by the way. Maybe you don't know, very shy person. My best moments in life are when I'm standing in front of a classroom, a crowd, or when I'm sitting alone reading, solitude. One-on-one, people coming, talking, find it very difficult. My children say, I'm a socially awkward guy. I ask them, what does this mean? They've tried to explain, I still don't understand it. But that's how they say it. But the point is, we need to transcend the level of the conventional and the commonplace and get to a level where we are now reimagining this country. We can't remake it if we can't imagine. And that Italian philosopher Giambattista Vico says, we made society. We can remake it. It is a human artifact. It was made, what we have now was made by us, all of us. If it is bad, we all created this mess. Let's get ourselves out of the mess collectively. So land. Once we understand this fundamental proposition that I'm making, at the heart, the pith of and substance of the discourse is land, very important, worth billions, administered poorly, subject to strictures inherited from the past that are not serving us going forward, and that will in fact impoverish us more. We need to have a different system, a new hybridized, if you may, tenurial system, so that people can hold land and hold it in perpetuity that runs in their families, and it is part of the wealth, because these families will be there. They'll keep the DNA that connects all these people, runs. And these days they in fact say they can even cure you using your DNA. They check your DNA and they find these guys, the Mudises and others, they can cure certain ailments through an analysis of your DNA. And that means your ancestry, going all the way to your ancestors, coming all the way down. Those links and connections mean so much, even in medicine, in science. And we sit here and we can't reimagine smart people like this, then we have a problem as a country. So we need to, once we understand these things, and the July session of Parliament is a law-making session. So you need, wherever you are, to start formulating suggestions for law reform in relation to land. These reforms must be led by yourselves, because you have the facts, you have the experience, you have the exposure that those members of Parliament do not have. Now we get down to the mundane, perhaps. In order for us to move from where we are to where we ought to be, we need to understand these two poles of tension. Where are we? Where ought we to be? Where we are, I've given a charcoal outline. Where we ought to be, I've also outlined, foreshadowed. Now, if we understand where we ought to be, where we are going, we're clear, it's precise, we've imagined it well, we've outlined it, we've battled, and we have crystallized it. We go back to where we are. And when we look at where we are, I always say, let us not flatter ourselves. Let's not gloat and glorify and revel in self-congratulation. As president, I've achieved. No. Oh, this one achieved this one did not achieve. Don't care about that. Where are we? Fact. Once we understand and we decide where we ought to be together, then we must appreciate something. That vision, that ambition, where we ought to be, is not self-executing. It will not achieve itself just because we've mapped it out and we've put it on some slides. We can present it. No. It now needs agency, human agency, and institutional repertory, a repertoire of institutions, a whole array, a system, an ecosystem of institutions that must take us there, and a program and strategy to get us there. And that program and strategy involves something strategists call pivot points or moments, where you must concentrate effort in order to achieve results. What are the pivot moments in relation to the land question? You need to engage in that debate. Because once we identify the pivot points or point, we then must focus resources and energy on the pivot point, because it then opens up where we want to go and takes us there. So in relation to land is what we are concerned about here and now. What are the pivot points? You need to identify them for me and for the government as experienced people, so that we can then channel resources to the attainment of these pivots. And then we can have a seamless landscape, if you will. Then we will understand what institutional reorganization, reconfiguration we need. Are the land boards themselves, as presently configured, ideal? Or do we need to change them, rearrange them, reorganize them for cutting-edge delivery and efficiency? You will deal with these questions and advise. And when you decide they need some tinkering with, they need some meshing and smashing and reorganizing, you will also come up with a suggested structure for it to work because of these problems that we've encountered. We think if you organized the land board this way, then it will work better. And then we say, who are the people that we should put in here? We decide, and we put them there. And we equip them fully to deliver. And equipping them fully to deliver, informed by a deep appreciation of the amount of work and the value that they bring, and the importance of what they deal with to the economy and the overall welfare of the country, there is no way in which we cannot take care of their needs and their welfare. Right now, I can hazard an approximation that you are not being taken care of because you are not valued. And you are not valued because there is no understanding of the work that you do and its importance to the economy. Without land, the investors cannot invest. They come here and the first thing they want is land. So if the land board is not kicking, then investments will not work. So we need to make sure, you've said, and I appreciate this because it is coming from you. So that when I say it, and I've said it, now I have a big and formidable excuse to say it, that these processes that we apply are outdated. They are archaic. We need to change them and bring forth quicker, more agile, more efficient processes. You've said it. And that Chinese Mao Zedong said, when you want to do things, you must go to the people and discuss with them. He actually says you must plant the idea in them. They catch on to the idea. They embrace it as their own, and they give it to you. And you take it, your idea, you run with it. And the people are saying, that's our boy doing what we want him to do because we told him. And I'm happy when that happens. So now it's coming from you, these processes. And I now have some grist for my meal. I'll tell the members of parliament, folks, hey, those people are killing me. Which people? Landboard. They say these processes are anachronistic, they don't want them. They create problems. They've actually given me a template. I would like you to enact this template into law so that they can work better. And then, let's also resource them, give them resources that are commensurate with the amount of land mass that they have to traverse so that they can do their work effectively, efficiently. So I want to go and make a compelling argument. And I'll not be the one making the argument. You will make the argument through me and through others that you will prime. Weaponize them to go and make your case for you on the floor of Parliament. You see, so that they understand what is at stake here. And I'm happy to have come to interact with you and to have listened to the issues as they were raised by the eminent lady. And I realized we have people who understand. We are not short of knowledge and experience, but we've been short of something. Just the energy, the boldness to say these things and say them forcefully and publicly and as evocatively as they have been articulated today, so that whoever listens cannot but hear and heed. And that is very, very important. On the other issues that you've raised, I have heard, I've understood, and as I say, for me the fulcrum is that now we will try and make people understand what you people do, why it is important. And if its importance is understood fully, I don't see why these issues that you raise cannot then be taken on board and resolved boldly, robustly. And so, for me, I'm sold. I've been persuaded. I'm on your side, fighting your battle. And I hope you will continue to offer support, give information and facts. And as you've done so valiantly thus far, you will continue to do the best you can in even these difficult circumstances as we wrestle with making them better, spectacularly better. And so I thank you. I thank you very, very much. And it's always humbling to interact with people who serve their country. So thank you. Thank you very much.